Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks and TYT Politics. If you haven't seen me, I've been on the campaign trail for the Young Turks for about 7 months. You can check me out at TYT Politics. We're calling this unconventional wisdom, which I like because there's a lot of conventional wisdom going on around here that's not so true. So we're going to get to all the good stuff. I have a great panel of delegates and candidates. I'll start all the way to the end. We have David Sparks, who is a at-large delegate for Bernie Sanders. You're also running for state Congress in Ohio. Then I have Wayne Borders. If you're a diehard TYT Politics fan, you've seen him before. I interviewed him, a lot of other Bernie supporters back in January outside the South Carolina presidential debate. He had a great soundbite. I'll get to that. And if you also have watched me before, this is Shyla Nelson. She was the co-founder of Election Justice USA. Election Justice USA was the nonpartisan voting rights group that launched a federal lawsuit against the New York Board of Elections on Election Day, which was in April. Basically, as you know, New York voters, over 100,000 were purged. In Brooklyn alone, there was a lot more shenanigans that went on in New York. Shyla and her group were leading the charge on that. And you're also a national delegate for Bernie from his home state, Vermont. And full disclosure, she grew up pretty much around the Sanders family, so you know the whole thing. So I want to get right to it. Before Bernie's speech, I kind of want to get a feel from delegates because I've seen some things up close, but I've also heard some things that in many ways there's kind of like you're being treated like second-class citizens. I've heard that I talked to volunteers yesterday who paid on their own dime to come here, super volunteers for Bernie, that were given the go-around for hours before they could get credentials. And they were supposed to be on the floor with their delegates, but they were put in the nosebleeds. I also saw up close Hillary Clinton supporters literally stand in front of Bernie supporters during his speech with signs, with their signs, to kind of block. I mean, this is anecdotal, this isn't the whole arena. But wanted to see kind of what you've been seeing, being delegates, what you've been experiencing. What's the mood? Because there's obviously a lot of Sanders supporters here who are vocal and not falling in line as the party. We'll start with you, David.
Well,
hold it a little closer to you.
One of the first things we noticed was we were getting a lot of what we call the stink eye around some of the events. And last night, one of the party members from the Ohio Democratic Party was threatening to revoke delegate credentials for people holding up the TPP signs in the stands. And but we stood up to that, and they backed down and said you can put them up.
I'm trying to figure it out, but I was preparing for this. This morning there was a hubbubaloo at the Texas delegation. Apparently one of the Texas delegates went on stage or whatever it was and said some things about Hillary Clinton that weren't so kind, and he temporarily had his credentials pulled. I hear he's gotten it back. I'll be reporting on that more. Yeah, I've heard little things that Bernie delegates, I don't want to say intimidated, but it's being communicated to them. If you cause a ruckus and if you make your voice heard in a condemning way, you might have credentials pulled. Wayne, you're with the South Carolina delegation. What have you experienced so far? Because I should say I've also talked to people who are having a good time and have been treated well, so it's a mix.
Yeah, South Carolina, in our delegation, we've experienced just a lot of politeness, really.
Okay.
I mean, our state is kind of known for that, in addition to a lot of violence, but we, all in all, have had a good experience so far. No one's credentials have been threatened. Because as one of the co-whips for our delegation.
Tell the audience what that means.
So as a whip, I'm supposed to get out information to our delegates and share with them things that come through the campaign, just quick. So when we received the email not to make any disruptions or boo, we were all kind of just like, okay, we'll let things happen and watch the proceedings, and hopefully there won't be a need for us to become ruckus. But some of our delegates, one of our delegates I know was basically sitting around a lot of Clinton delegates who were bad-mouthing Bernie and his supporters. That was probably the one thing that I didn't really enjoy too much about yesterday, was that our seats are assigned, and we're pretty much just mixed in with the Clinton delegates rather than being a block.
Yeah. And when you're receiving emails not to boo and all these, is that coming from your delegation or that's coming from Clinton folks?
No, that's coming from Senator Sanders. That's coming from
okay.
Senator Sanders. And, as delegates, we want to respect his wishes as much as possible. And it's not because, it's not because just we want to have deference to the campaign, but we also do want to be respectful to the Clinton delegates because we get it. The party as an institution wants her.
Right.
They have wanted her since the day after the election in 2008.
Right.
So, so we're being respectful and, appropriate when it is time or need for us to stand up.
Right. Shiloh, so you obviously, I got her. You obviously grew up around Sanders' family. You know the family. He spoke last night. I was up near California. It was a little rowdy. And Bernie. I don't want to say, you're a second daughter, but you know his family, you know his daughters. A lot of his supporters, it was a mixed crowd, but a lot of them were even booing some of the things he said. I will say straight up, there were a lot of things he said that don't match her record. In terms of what he said and also whether he sold out, I want to see your thoughts because obviously there's a lot of passionate people here who volunteered for Senator Sanders, gave money to Senator Sanders, watched the Young Turks and other things, and were kind of consumed by his movement. What do you think of his speech? And knowing him, what do you feel personally was going through his head?
There's a lot to say in response to all of that, Jordan. I think that first and foremost, I want to impress upon all of your viewers and our fellow members of Bernie Nation that I don't have a single doubt that Bernie Sanders, in every choice and every decision that he has made throughout this election cycle, however difficult, however complex, however confusing to his followers, to his supporters, ultimately always has the best interest of his delegates, his supporters, and the American people, always closest in his heart. I think there are a lot of layers to the process by which he chose to run as a member of the Democratic Party. As we know, he's caucused with the Democrats for decades in Congress and as a senator, and has had an alignment with them in many respects for years and years, with some noteworthy differences in policy positions. However, of the two major parties, he's been mostly aligned with the Democrats, so it was a natural affinity and relationship. But in many respects, he's a relative newcomer to the inside, sort of the mechanics of the Democratic Party. That's been an uncomfortable thing for the party. And as the movement has grown, we have seen the tensions of that playing out on every level, from the top of the campaign, level, all the way to the delegates and the grassroots followers. The question of whether Bernie has sold out, I think, I completely understand why grassroots voices are feeling that. We see this enormous political machine into which he has inserted this movement and his career. And he has done so for all of the right reasons at a critically important time in our country's history. And what I would invite all of us to do with that is to trust him. I know that this looks very complicated, and it looks like he has kind of kowtowed to the very machine that he's been fighting his entire career. I think there are a lot of questions we don't have answers to. For example, one question I wonder about and others wonder about, the Republicans, you might recall in that fateful debate early in the season, asked for a pledge of loyalty from the stage, from all of their candidates, that if they are not the nominee, will they pledge support to the candidate who was chosen? Of course, the noteworthy moment there was that Donald Trump himself did not, he refused.
His only loyalty is to Donald Trump.
That's exactly right, yes. True to form, at least, right? We know that's at least consistent. I wonder, and others wonder, whether we don't know the answer to this, and I'd love to get an answer from the Democratic Party. In the process of negotiating Bernie running as a Democrat, did the DNC privately request in any kind of an agreement a pledge of loyalty to the presumptive nominee and require an endorsement in order for his delegates to be present and seated at the convention and for him to have a chance to have a voice on this national stage? that context is really important for understanding why he might have made the decisions. We don't have confirmed answers to those questions, and I sincerely hope we'll get them promptly.
And the audience should know, I mean, there's a gazillion reports that go around. I can't confirm or deny all of them, but I'll just tell you, there are reports that behind closed doors, he was threatened. If you don't endorse her, if you don't, play ball, you might get some of your committee spots pulled in the Senate. When he came back to speak to the Senate, after the primary was formally over, there were some boo birds. They didn't like the fact that he was out there attacking the Democratic establishment, which is them, for the last year. So I definitely think there were things behind the scenes. But going through the speech, not just Bernie's speech, but other speeches, I got the sense that there was a real alternative reality of what was being said on stage versus what's actually going on. First example, Cory Booker, Senator of New Jersey. He's quoting Maya Angelou. He's talking about the middle class, all these things. Short of Hillary Clinton, I don't know another lawmaker who takes more money from Wall Street. I think by data, he takes more even than Mitch McConnell, who takes a lot. So I found that kind of a disconnect from the actual record. Elizabeth Warren, Senator from Massachusetts, kind of on the rocks right now with some progressives are very disappointed that she didn't endorse Senator endorse Senator Sanders. She was talking about, we got to fight against the banks and all these things. And the person she's on stage talking on behalf obviously hasn't done that. To you, David, what did you feel in terms of hearing, we heard the talk, but a lot of these people talking are the same people who are perpetuating this rigged system we talk about.
Well, that caused
hold the mic to you.
Yeah, that caused a little bit of stir up in our delegation because we were around a lot of the Clinton people, and one of the gentlemen from the Bernie delegation in Ohio was like, "He's behind the hedge funds."
To your mic.
Yeah, he just went kind of ballistic, I would say, but in a very spirited and passionate way, and a lot of that imagery, the Sanders folk, we can see through that. We go to, we can look up how much all these people make on our smartphones, and who's giving them money, and what industries are giving them money on our smartphones. We can go to followthemoney.org.
OpenSecrets.org too.
OpenSecrets.org. Yeah, there's just so many different sources, and so I think there's an establishment disconnect that that they don't realize they're in the world that they're in, and so they're marching out people with great platitudes, but like, oh, you took such and such money from Goldman Sachs,
and also I should note behind the scenes here, all these lawmakers are talking about fighting for the middle class, equal playing field, leveling it out. I mean, there's lunches, there's breakfasts, they're hosted by certain groups, certain people. They got those their name involved because they gave hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. So behind, overhanging all this talk is the pay for play, the quid pro quo that we've been talking about this whole campaign. Wayne, I'm going to do a little imitation. The reason I wanted to have you on, I've been on the campaign trail now since December, and one of the moments that stood out to me, the mainstream media only cares about sensational sound bites. Mm-hmm. You struck me because when I was in South Carolina covering the debate,
we've forgotten about each other, and that's what we need to restore in this country. We need to really ramp up our socialist aspect and really start taking care of our neighbors. The military is socialist. I don't understand.
There was Bernie supporters outside on one side, there were Hillary supporters, and we were talking. A lot of establishment Democrats we speak to, they're kind of like, in our heart, yeah, we like what he says, but we're voting with our heads.
When do we actually decide to make a change as a people? When is that time? When is it ever that time to make a change? Is it always later? Is it always later? Because later never comes. Tomorrow never comes. At some point, we have to do something today.
I mean, you're a little more even-keeled now, but tell me about from there to now. You obviously were talking about we can't keep perpetuating neoliberalism.
Yeah.
When you're listening to these speeches, what do you think?
So, the thing that they always tell us, especially the establishment folks, is, oh yeah, we need young people involved, you need to get involved, and it's usually centered around just voting. They don't ask us to be here. They don't ask us to, come to a party meeting and sit through an hour of someone, showing a presentation in a cold room. Like, they don't ask for those kinds of things. But as well, young people, I don't think, know that that's part of the mechanics of how you learn to participate and be a part of this larger thing. Because I'm a bad Democrat. I will say that, because I'm mostly, a hardcore progressive, never voted for Barack Obama. Like, I've been a Green Party candidate since 2008. And even I didn't understand, all the minutia that goes into this. So what changed from our moment in Charleston to now...
In January, yeah.
In January in Charleston, is that, I worked on Senator Sanders' campaign. I was a community organizer for like 8 counties in South Carolina, leading a whole team, helping him lead a team.
Tell the audience, what did you do specifically?
It was a lot of precinct data, cutting turf, deploying canvassers, driving around, making sure people had supplies. And so what changed between then and now is, the process by which we were choosing delegates in our state. And I had a moment of clarity as to why it would be important to be a delegate. It not just because I worked on his campaign, not just because I really believed in him. It's that's the involvement, that's the level of involvement that young people and we all need to have. We need to show up. We need to be here, being the voice for all those people out there who are like, the system's rigged, it's messed up, like, we need change. I need to be in here for them. So even yesterday when I was walking through, all the security and coming in, I was going down the line of the protesters at the fence saying, thank you so much for being here. Because if we are the government...
In the 98-degree heat.
Thank you for your service. Yeah, thank them for their service, yes. And so if we are going to be the government, if we are going to take this whole thing over, because a lot of these people won't be around in 40 years. Let's just be honest. But if we're going to take this over, if we're going to really be the people, we're going to be our government, we need to be involved in the inside and on the outside. Right. That's the only way this works.
And like one thing that struck me, even when I'm on the road, like I'm a journalist, but I'm also a human. I make no bones about it. I lean towards Bernie. I don't carry water for him. I mean, I've been critical of him too. But I was afraid that there was going to be a deflation. People were going to be deflated, after the last primary, after he spoke on that stage. I mean, you're looking around. I mean, I was at the art museum the other night, and all of a sudden, Bernie delegates break out and chants, Bernie, Bernie. Not so nice things about W. Wasserman Schultz, who we'll get to. I mean, there is no deflation here. There is only motivation, passion, and I kind of think, what? I mean, I've studied history. I've watched Game of Thrones. There's very few wars that were won without losing some battles.
Yeah, but as well, very few wars were ever won where the people who supported them were disempowered.
Right.
Bernie has empowered millions of people around the country. I mean, that's part of why some people are outside. That's why many of us are in here as delegates, because he has empowered us to really become a part of the process. Like David here is running for his state house, for a state house seat. I'm also working for, on the advisory committee at this point of a candidate who's going to be running against Joe Wilson in South Carolina's 2nd District,
Is that the You Lie Joe Wilson?
That is the You Lie Joe Wilson.
If you remember, this fabulous politician screamed out at President Obama's State of the Union, "You lie." Yeah. So, real quick before I go to break, Shyla, you kind of, having done a lot of grassroots activism, this and that, you're seeing all these marches, these protests. Does this look like, this is just for this week, or you see the momentum carrying forward?
I like to say we're just getting started, and I echo the same feeling. I went one by one and thanked the protesters as I was coming in. I think Bernie's campaign, one of the great legacies of this campaign, is the work to dissolve the boundaries between inside and outside. This idea that somehow Washington, inside the Beltway, is this mysterious labyrinthine maze that the average person can't fully navigate or understand. And a lot of the work of this campaign has been to illuminate how our government works, how to get people involved, to make sure that we understand the process process of governance, the process of choosing our leaders and getting people engaged and empowered to take on that process. I see in the protesters, it chokes me up. I'm seeing the depth of passion and commitment and dedication, and it's not just to Bernie. I think it's really key to keep in mind, and he reminds us of this every time he speaks. This is about us. This is about our movement. This is about reigniting the true lowercase d democratic spirit of the American people and giving us literally a future to believe in. And that's no cliche. The man has put it on the line for his entire career for that. And what he has attracted and who he has attracted into this movement, I said followers earlier, truly, we're all leaders. And when I look at the profile of the Bernie supporters I've met, and I'm sure you have as well, we're seeing, in many cases, lifelong community activists, organizers, people who've been cleaning up the messes of the homeless in their community, who've been clothing and feeding and sheltering the disenfranchised of our country. These are people who found in Bernie a lightning rod to unite these missions, to unite and see the interrelatedness of all of these issues, economic justice, climate justice, social justice, and actually come together around a common goal, which is to do everything we can to see if we could get Bernie Sanders to lead this nation. But inside of that are these incredible leaders in their own right. So the commitment that we're seeing on the streets and the commitment that we're seeing among our delegates is a commitment that we all have carried throughout our entire lives, even the millennials who in their own way come in as the greater stakeholders in the planetary game. It's incredibly exciting to see what's happening. This is a political revolution, and it's on.
We're going to take a quick break. By the way, if you like what they're saying, these two, shameless plug, youtube.com/TYT Politics.